911 emergency.
Yes, we just heard a huge boom, like a gas explosion or a car blew up or something.
San Diego's fire department responds to the 911 call and the single vehicle blazing away along La Jolla Scenic Drive. While a journalist rolls tape, the flames are doused, smoke begins to clear, and the charred remains of a human body first become visible in the passenger seat of the car. Plates on the back of the car are issued out of Kansas and check out to a David Stevens. Current address, Pacific Beach, San Diego. San Diego Homicide works the interior of David Stevens' apartment, looking for any clues as to his killer. Scattered throughout the apartment are other signs, fresh signs, that David Stevens' last night on Earth was perhaps not spent alone.
As I made my way into the bedroom, I found a discarded wrapper for a condom in the wastebasket, as well as a tube of KY jelly. There was also 2 glasses on that same nightstand, one of which had lipstick on it. In the bathroom, I found strands of black hair. They were long and straight, appeared to be a female's hair.
In the bedroom, Joe Cristenziani finds 2 sets of fingerprints plastered on the mirrored headboard over Stevens' bed.
What struck me as unusual about these fingerprints were 2 things. A, it was almost 10 fingers, as in 2 hands. Had 2 sets of hands. One was obviously larger than the other, which would indicate a man and perhaps a woman's fingerprints. We were real confident. It was very obvious that someone recently had sex in that apartment.
Detectives collect physical evidence, focusing on the smaller set of prints and the long black hairs. Both signs of a woman, one who most likely had sex with Stevens shortly before his murder, and one who may know what happened to him. All detectives have to do now is find her.
There was a little topless bar right next door called Dancers, and we would go there 2 or 3 times a week. And that was the only place that I could think of that he would have met someone.
Detective John Teft hits the club and circulates Stevens' picture.
A lot of them knew the guy. He was a regular customer. They were upset about it. All the employees were always made available to us. Many of the employees came down, provided DNA samples, fingerprints, whatever we wanted.
Fingerprints from the dancers are compared to those found in David Stevens' bedroom. None of them match. With no viable leads on the mystery woman, Detective J.R. Young decides to take a different tack and opens up the victim's personal address book.
An entry he had in his day organizer, which he had a smiley face and there was a name associated with it. I learned that had not been followed up on, so I contacted the person whose phone number that was, and it turned out to be one of the dancers that we had not yet talked to.
Young interviews the dancer. She tells him that she and Stevens were casual friends. He submits her prints for comparison. Again, no match. 4 months after David Stevens was pulled from his car, his case is dropped into the cold files, where it remains for 2 years, until detectives decide to play a long shot. On January 28, 2001, the Baltimore Ravens prepare to play the New York Giants in Super Bowl 35. With a huge television audience, San Diego Homicide decides to run a Crime Stoppers spot, flashing David Stevens' picture and requesting help. The next day, an anonymous female calls in.
There was an individual at a party, Super Bowl party, with several other people, and when that was shown, this woman goes, that person that was involved in that killing is a friend of mine, and she then telephoned the police and said, you should go talk to this person. She knows something about your killing.
The caller identifies a possible suspect, and it happens to be the same stripper who 2 years before had said she and David Stevens were friends.
Her DNA and her fingerprints didn't match, so physically we couldn't put her at the crime scene.
Even without physical evidence, detectives believe the call might be more than coincidence. For the next 6 months, they worked the strip club angle. Month after month, they continue to come up empty. Until one day in November of 2001, when another call reaches the homicide team.
I was actually sitting at my desk in the homicide office when the secretary got the call and says, I have a friend who's an eyewitness to a murder and she needs to talk to somebody. So she transfers the call to me. I speak briefly with the friend, who in turn puts Nee on the phone.
Nee is Nee Norn, a woman who claims she has information about the murder of David Stevens.
I did press her on the phone and asked her if we could come up and talk with her. And she said yes, of course. And then John and I went up and spoke with her up at our business.
Norn tells police David Stevens was her supervisor at the Perfect Match, as well as her lover, and that she knows the name of the man who killed Stevens. Detectives stopped the interview and asked Nee Norn to accompany them back to the police station. Nee Norn tells police 3 years earlier, at the age of 18, she began a workplace flirtation with David Stevens. The fly in the ointment was Nee's boyfriend at the time, a 34-year-old married man named Ron Barker.
She was seeing him on the side, and she was becoming kind of dissatisfied with him, and David was expressing an interest in that.
According to Norn, she and Stevens made plans to go on their first date.
Did you guys have sex that night?
According to Norn, she left Stevens' apartment at 3 a.m. and drove home, only to find Ron Barker waiting in a jealous rage. Nee Norn tells Barker a version of what happened that night. To cover her infidelity, however, she tells Barker the sex was not consensual.
And what happened was basically she related to us is that she'd met with David, had sex with him that night, and then Ron found out about it, and then Ron Barker killed him.
Nee Norn tells police she was present when Barker shot and killed Stevens, but could do nothing to stop him. That she was as much a victim of Ron Barker's rage as David Stevens.
She's implicating Barker as the person who's the jealous boyfriend who actually kills Stevens and burns up his car. And I said, are you willing to phone him and talk about this while we record it? Because now it's no longer her word, it'll be their word. And so she was willing to do that.
She got me involved with this, and I stood enough to do for her.
Okay.
So you feel betrayed by her?
Exactly. So it's basically she betrayed me, and all of a sudden she decided to just walk out on me. After all the thing I did for her, I just had enough. And she playing game with me too much. So I'm just tired of her playing game with me, so I decided, no, I'm gonna go down and take you down with me.
Detectives have two suspects, each pointing a finger at the other. Ron Barker, however, has a bit more credibility, as he readily admits to being the shooter, while Nee Norn claims to be entirely innocent. According to Barker, Stevens drives Nee Norn to where he thinks her car has broken down. Barker follows behind. When Barker flashes his lights, Norn tells Stevens it is her brother, there to help with the car. Stevens suspects nothing, and Barker gets into the back seat. Then he reaches over and shoots Stevens twice in the head.
They set up this pretty elaborate plan on how to get him out of his apartment, get him into a remote area, and then put your arm around his neck and shoot him in the back of the head.
Barker goes on to explain that he set the victim's car on fire, hoping to destroy evidence of the shooting. Barker even has the burns to prove it. According to Barker, he and Norn swore each other to secrecy and kept things quiet for 3 years, until the relationship fell apart. Detectives charge Ron Barker with murder in the first degree. The next day, they arrest Nee Norn and charge her with the exact same thing. In January of 2003, Ron Barker represents himself in a San Diego courtroom. He questions witnesses and asserts his taped confession was coerced. The jury, however, doesn't buy it. After deliberating just 2 hours, they find Barker guilty of first-degree murder. He is sentenced to life in prison. On January 27, 2003, Nee Norn is also found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life.